The research station on Kepler 442b shook violently as another wave of terrified screams echoed through the metal walls. Dr. Sarah Chun pressed her back against the reinforced door of the emergency shelter, listening to the chaos outside. The other xenobiologists huddled in the corner, their faces pale with terror. "They're getting closer," whispered Dr. Vex, a tall Altarian with crystalline skin that now flickered with stress patterns. His species had survived countless galactic conflicts, but even he trembled at the sounds beyond their sanctuary. The screaming wasn't coming from the research team. It was coming from the predator cubs. 3 weeks ago, the Joint Galactic Research Expedition had discovered something unprecedented on this remote world. The apex predators of Kepler 442b were unlike anything in the known galaxy. Standing 8 feet tall with razor-sharp claws and teeth designed for tearing through the toughest armor, they were nightmares made flesh. But what made them truly terrifying was their intelligence. They hunted in coordinated packs, used tools, and demonstrated problem-solving abilities that rivaled most spacefaring species. The adult Vorthak, as the team had named them, were magnificent killers. But their cubs were something else entirely. When separated from their pack, the young Vorthak would emit piercing screams that could drive sentient beings mad. The sound frequency somehow interfaced with the neural pathways of most galactic species, causing intense fear, panic, and, in extreme cases, complete mental breakdown. The expedition had been studying a family group when disaster struck. A geological event had separated 3 cubs from their parents, trapping them in a cavern system near the research station. For 2 days now, the cubs had been screaming nonstop, their cries growing more desperate and terrified with each passing hour. The research team was trapped. Every attempt to leave the station resulted in immediate psychological breakdown. Even the hardened military escorts, members of the elite Terran Defense Corps, had been reduced to quivering wrecks after just minutes of exposure to the cubs' distress calls. "We need to do something," Dr. Chen said, though her own voice shook. "Those cubs are starving. They'll die if we don't act soon." Commander Reeves, the expedition's military leader, shook his head grimly. "I've seen combat on 12 worlds, Doctor. I've faced down Nexian war beasts and Krillian death swarms. But this is different. My own men can't function out there." Through the small porthole, they could see the 3 cubs huddled together near the cavern entrance. They were beautiful creatures, their silver fur marked with intricate patterns that seemed to shift in the alien sunlight. But their mouths were open in continuous screams of terror and hunger, and their large eyes were wide with panic. "There has to be something we can do," insisted Dr. Yara, a Centaurian ethologist whose expertise in animal behavior had been crucial to the mission. "In all my studies, I've never encountered anything like this. The cubs aren't being aggressive. They're just scared children calling for their parents." That's when they noticed Marcus Sullivan standing by the communication array. The human xenopsychologist had been quiet for most of the crisis, studying the acoustic readings and neural interference patterns with an intensity that bordered on obsession. "Marcus, Dr. Chen called softly. What are you thinking?" Sullivan looked up from his data pad, his brown eyes reflecting a mixture of determination and something else. "Hope, perhaps. I've been analyzing the frequency patterns of their calls. The cubs aren't just screaming randomly. They're using a complex communication system, probably learned from their parents." "We know that already," Commander Reeves said impatiently. "What we need is a way to stop them without getting ourselves killed." Sullivan walked to the main viewport, pressing his palm against the reinforced glass. Outside, the 3 cubs continued their heartbreaking chorus of fear. "What if we don't need to stop them? What if we need to answer them?" The room fell silent except for the distant screaming. "Answer them." Dr. Vex's crystalline features flickered with confusion. "How could we possibly? Human vocal cords are remarkably versatile," Sullivan interrupted, his voice growing stronger with conviction. "We can produce sounds across a wider frequency range than most species. I've been studying similar cases in Earth's history. Human parents have always found ways to calm distressed young, regardless of species." Dr. Chen stared at him in disbelief. "Marcus, those aren't Earth animals. Their calls are literally driving us insane." "Because we're treating them as weapons instead of communication," Sullivan replied. He was already moving toward the door controls. Every parent in the galaxy has soothing sounds they use to calm their children. The Altarians have their crystal harmonics. Centaurians use their subsonic humming. Even the Nexians have their rhythmic clicking patterns. And humans? Dr. Yara asked, though she looked like she already feared the answer. Sullivan's hand hovered over the door release. Humans whisper. We've been doing it for thousands of years. Soft words, gentle sounds, the kind of voice you'd use to calm a frightened child. Commander Reeves stepped forward, his hand moving to his sidearm. Absolutely not. I can't let you commit suicide, Sullivan. It's not suicide, Sullivan insisted. Look at the readings. Their calls aren't random. They're following patterns, like a distress beacon. If I can respond with the right tone, the right intention. The screaming outside suddenly intensified, and everyone in the shelter winced as the sound penetrated even their reinforced walls. Through the viewport, they could see one of the cubs had collapsed from exhaustion, though it continued to emit weak cries. They're dying, Dr. Chen whispered. Sullivan's jaw tightened with resolve. Let me try. If it doesn't work, I'll retreat immediately. Before anyone could stop him, he activated the door release. The moment the shelter opened, the full force of the cubs' screams hit the research team like a physical blow. Several members immediately collapsed, overwhelmed by the psychic assault of pure terror and desperation. But Sullivan stepped forward, his movements slow and deliberate. The three cubs noticed him immediately. Their screams grew even louder, but Sullivan didn't retreat. Instead, he knelt down about 20 feet from the cavern entrance and did something that defied all logic and scientific understanding. He began to whisper. Shoo, he said softly, his voice barely audible above their cries. It's okay. You're safe now. The cubs' screaming continued, but something changed in their posture. Their eyes, wide with panic, focused on the strange bipedal creature that had emerged from the metal structure. Sullivan continued his gentle murmuring, mixing soft human words with wordless sounds of comfort. He didn't try to approach them or make any threatening movements. He simply sat there, a calm presence in their world of terror, offering the kind of quiet reassurance that transcended species barriers. Gradually, impossibly, the cubs' screams began to soften. Their cries became less frantic, more questioning. They were still afraid, still calling for their parents, but the edge of pure panic was fading. Inside the shelter, the research team watched in amazement as the psychic pressure that had trapped them for 2 days began to lessen. They could think clearly for the first time since the crisis began. Impossible, Dr. Vex whispered, his crystalline skin flickering with wonder instead of fear. Outside, Marcus Sullivan continued his gentle whispers, and, slowly, carefully, began to inch closer to 3 of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. He was just a human, armed with nothing but soft words and an ancient instinct that had comforted frightened children since the dawn of his species. And, somehow, miraculously, it was working. Marcus Sullivan had been sitting with the cubs for 6 hours now. The alien suns of Kepler, 442b, were beginning to set, casting long shadows across the research station's clearing. The 3 young Vorthak had gradually moved closer to the human, drawn by his steady presence and calming whispers. The largest cub, which the team had designated Alpha, was now less than 5 feet away from Sullivan. Its silver fur was matted with exhaustion, and its once terrifying screams had reduced to soft whimpers. The other 2 cubs, Beta and Gamma, huddled together nearby, their large eyes never leaving the strange creature that had somehow understood their distress. Inside the shelter, the research team watched through their instruments and cameras, documenting every moment of this unprecedented interspecies contact. Dr. Chun monitored Sullivan's vital signs remotely, amazed that his stress levels remained remarkably stable despite being in close proximity to apex predators. His heart rate is actually decreasing, she reported to the team. It's as if being near them is calming him down too. Commander Reeves remained skeptical, his hand never straying far from his weapon. This can't last forever. What happens when the parent Vorthak return? Adult specimens have been recorded taking down armored vehicles. Dr. Yara was busy analyzing the audio recordings of Sullivan's interaction with the cubs. The frequency modulation in his voice is extraordinary. He's somehow matching their communication patterns while maintaining human vocal characteristics. It's like he's speaking their emotional language. Outside, Sullivan continued his gentle monologue. He had learned that certain sounds calmed the cubs more than others. Low humming seemed to soothe them, while sudden changes in tone made them alert and nervous. Gradually, he had developed a rhythm that seemed to resonate with their natural communication patterns. "That's it," he whispered softly as Alpha took another tentative step closer. "You're safe here. No one's going to hurt you." The cubs had stopped calling for their parents entirely now. Instead, they were making new sounds, soft chirping noises that Dr. Yara recognized as contentment vocalizations from her xenobiology studies. These were sounds young predators made when they felt secure and protected. As the alien night began to fall, Sullivan realized the cubs were exhausted. They had been screaming for days without rest, and their small bodies were pushed to the limit. Alpha's head was beginning to droop, and the other two were swaying with fatigue. "Sleep," Sullivan whispered, his voice so soft it was barely audible. "It's time to sleep." He began humming a simple melody, an old Earth lullaby his grandmother had sung to him decades ago. The tune was ancient, passed down through generations of humans who had used it to comfort their children through dark nights and uncertain times. The effect on the cubs was immediate and profound. Alpha's eyes widened briefly, then began to flutter closed. The cub's massive head lowered to the ground, and, for the first time in days, it stopped making any sound at all. Beta and Gamma quickly followed suit, drawn into peaceful slumber by the hypnotic quality of Sullivan's gentle humming. Within minutes, all three cubs were fast asleep, their breathing deep and regular. The research station, which had been filled with terrified screams for so long, was finally quiet. "Remarkable," Dr. Vex whispered from inside the shelter. "He's actually put them to sleep." Sullivan remained motionless, not wanting to disturb the sleeping predators. But, as the hours passed, the cold night air of Kepler 442b began to take its toll. The cubs, adapted to the planet's climate, seemed comfortable enough, but Sullivan was beginning to shiver in his standard-issue expedition clothing. That's when Alpha did something that stunned everyone watching. The large cub stirred slightly, then deliberately moved closer to Sullivan. Its warm body pressed against the human's side, sharing heat in the cold alien night. Beta and Gamma soon followed, forming a protective circle around their unlikely guardian. "They're keeping him warm," Dr. Chun breathed in amazement. They recognized that he helped them, and now they're helping him. The night passed peacefully, with Sullivan and the three cubs sleeping together under the alien stars. The research team took shifts monitoring the situation, but there were no incidents. The cubs seemed completely at ease with their human companion, occasionally shifting in their sleep to maintain contact with him. As dawn approached, long-range sensors detected movement in the distance. The adult Vorthack were returning. Commander Reeves immediately activated the emergency protocols. "All personnel, prepare for immediate evacuation. The parent predators are approximately 2 hours out." But Sullivan, awakened by the commotion, had a different idea. He gently stirred the cubs, who woke with soft chirping sounds rather than screams. They looked up at him with what could only be described as trust.